off and running on the 3rd of November. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. I'm Bobby Trossett. This is Sarah Ellison, and today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mantis Sleep. Great to be with you guys. Feeling very refreshed and rejuvenated off of a, chill weekend. We didn't spend all Sunday working, but as a result, we had a chance to watch really, Sarah, a wild NFL Sunday for Week 9 that we're about to discuss right off the top. More importantly, though, the trade deadline, the NFL's annual trade deadline is approaching 24 hours, 4 p.m. Eastern. That's Tuesday the 4th, tomorrow. Teams have an opportunity up until that deadline, Sarah, to perhaps make a move. And the Ravens already made a move over the weekend. So we'll talk about Jaire Alexander. We'll talk about one as of this morning that Philadelphia made. And we're going to get into all that and more coming up. Great to be with you guys. Partner, great to see you. Let's get it.
Let's get it, man. There was so much good football and so much going on from the weekend, and I can't wait to discuss that and the implications it has in the AFC North. But first, listen, this is what happened first thing this morning. We all know that the trade deadline is tomorrow. It is tomorrow at 4:00. The Ravens are in the market for some pressure that they can generate along the defensive line, whether it's the interior defensive line or an outside linebacker. Shoot, maybe they're in the market for a guard too. I don't know, but it feels like they're more in the market for defense. And then one of the trade candidates that we've mentioned over the last couple weeks, Bobby, is Jaelan Phillips, the edge rusher out of Miami. He indeed was traded this morning, not to the Ravens, instead to the GM who always seems to be active, which is old Howie over at the Philadelphia Eagles. So they got Jaelan Phillips. They didn't get him for super cheap, though. It's for a 2026 third-round pick. Now, Bobby, this is the third trade the Eagles have made in the past week because they got Phillips. We're going to talk about this in a minute. But over the weekend, the Ravens traded Jaire Alexander over to the Eagles, and they also got cornerback Michael Carter. The Ravens obviously have already made a trade of themselves with Alohi Gilman. But the Eagles, they're out there. They're making moves. And so my question to you, Bobby, is do you wish that EDC himself had made this deal for Jaelan Phillips?
Well, he's got a checkered and perhaps questionable injury history. So I know this player was high on a lot of Ravens fans' wish list. But I think Eric DeCosta deserves a little bit of trust as we approach the 24-hour countdown to the deadline. This is a GM that since taking over for Ozzie, 8 years ago, 8 years ago, has been more active than he has been inactive, particularly when it comes to this deadline. And I know last year was not blockbuster. Deontay Johnson and Tre'Davious White that was not a blockbuster month for them. But one of those two players did help that secondary in Trey White, and Deontay obviously did not work out. You go back to 2022, Roquan Smith, that's worked out, and it certainly worked out in 2022. And back in 2019, Marcus Peters was a pretty darn good acquisition as well. And both of those players came over to Baltimore, Sarah, really related to some decent draft capital that Eric was willing to give up. So I know that with Howie, Howie's going to be Howie, and some of you out there are probably like at your wit's end right now, knowing just how much, whatever side of the ball it is, we all know how much help they need from a trenches standpoint. He's got a lot of time left. He's got the assets that can be used, Sarah. And on top of that, not only from a draft compensation standpoint, but the salary cap flexibility that he needs to go and make a move. There's still time. So I'm not going to lose my mind over one player just yet.
No, and this is not a player that I'm going to lose my mind for at all. I definitely felt like Jaelan Phillips was a candidate that we've named a few times, and I would be fine for that. But it's also not a trade that I'm drooling over with jealousy. You know what I mean? Because you mentioned a checkered past. I think you were talking about his injury history, his availability in years past. I can review that right now. He's had 1 year where he played, 2 years where he played all 17 games. One of them, he was a 15-game starter. The other one was his rookie year, and he just didn't start often. But since 2022, he has not finished a full season. In 23, he played half the season with 8 games. In 24, he had 4 games where he finished. In 25, 9. That's, a little over half where he played. So he has this checkered injury history, which again, I would have been fine if Eric DeCosta made this trade. But am I jealous? No, because if Eric DeCosta had made the trade, he'd be having the same questions that I'm sure Philadelphia has for Howie, which is Phillips somebody that you can rely on game in and game out to be available? So good for them. It would have been a fine trade for EDC, but not without its question marks. So that's why for me, I'm with you a little bit where it's like I'm going to wait to give my full reaction on Eric DeCosta and what he's done at this trade deadline once the trade deadline passes. Because Bobby, as you said, he's got about $15 to $16 million. Right. Well, if you add in the compensatory picks that he will likely get, he'll have about 11 picks. I don't know that they'll be able to have all those 11 picks on the roster when it comes around. And so I'm waiting to give him time. And you're saying to preach patience because he usually does make trades before the deadline. And on top of that, it feels like he's been building up for this, that he's got the resources both in the cap and with the draft pick. So I'm willing to be patient. And plus on top of it, just because it didn't happen at the deadline, he has already made one very impactful trade with Gilman. And so that has to be put in here. I mean, it's completely changed the defense since he's come to down. And even though it didn't happen on a Monday or a Tuesday, it did happen, and it's been extremely impactful.
No doubt. We'll have the metrics to not just suggest that, but confirm that coming up in just a bit. Captain Hard perhaps expressing many sentiments out there within the Ravens fan base today. He says if he doesn't make a move or makes a move for another semi-washed player, we need to have a conversation. Sarah, the Eagles are obviously in repeat mode, not win now mode. They want to repeat. And give themselves the best possible chance to repeat as Super Bowl champs back to back. So as we discussed, and you've already mentioned, they've been very, very active. They traded third for Jalen Phillips. Now let's talk about Jaire Alexander and the news from over the weekend. Howie and Eric obviously have a friendship. They talk very often, and both of them have been very, very aggressive during their tenures, respectively, as general managers. Over the weekend, we learned that Howie traded a 2026 sixth, so a 6th round pick in April coming up, to the Ravens for Jaire Alexander, who was on the outside looking in of the rotation. He was I guess you could call him CB4 or 5. He was inactive, right? I mean, you could call, Marlon, Nate, Cheeto, and he was behind all 3 of those, and he doesn't play special teams. So the writing was on the writing was on the wall, I think. I think we could probably all agree. So Philly trades a 2026 6th for Jaire and a 2027 7th. Your thoughts on the deal from over the weekend?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at this in 2 phases. Based off of what type of game day action Jaire Alexander was seeing, this seemed like a no-brainer trade. He's only getting a 6th rounder, and he had to give up a future 7th rounder in addition to Jaire. So these are like back end kind of assets that are being traded here. He got Jaire Alexander hasn't played a snap in over 4 weeks. It didn't look like he was going to. Like even when other guys went down, I think it said something that the Ravens turned to TJ Tampa, And so I don't know that anybody can be too upset based off of what opportunities he's been able to have now. It's like, this seems like the most unsurprising trade of a player from the Ravens perspective. But I think the bigger question going back is like, well, was it a waste to sign him in the first place? And so with 2020 perspective, hindsight looking back, waste isn't the right word I would use. I would just say it ended up being inconsequential. Waste to me means that you wasted the money away. It wasn't a trade to begin with, so you didn't have the resources to get him. He was an unrestricted free agent. He wasn't against the compensatory pick formula. And then they ended up getting $2 million back in this trade. So at the end of the day, it was inconsequential. And at the time, I think I would be disingenuous if we didn't say everybody was celebrating it when he was signed. Like we had fans from other teams jealous of this signing. The vast majority of Ravens fans were celebrating this signing at the time that it happened. And what the Ravens didn't know when they signed him is, one, that he'd re-injure his knee again. Because remember, he was healthy when he signed. We know he was coming back from a knee, but he was healthy. And we know that because he participated in the beginning of training camp. And remember, Lamar went at him and tested him. And Jaire Alexander had like an interception. I can't remember if it was the first day of camp but it was early camp. And Jaire was like, he was having fun with Lamar and being like, yeah, I'm back. And Lamar was like, I was testing him. So by all signs, he looked to be healthy, but then he injured his knee. Then on top of it, then once he re-injured his knee, which is not part of the calculus, although he does have an injury history, but again, it was a very low risk signing because they've already gotten a chunk of the money back through this trade. And then on top of it, I don't think they quite knew how bad the safety position was going to be. And now we're in this situation where they're using 3 safeties a vast majority of the time. So being on the depth chart at the cornerback position, you're not going to get on the field a lot. The Ravens have embraced this 3 safety look. It's been the right move to make. So I just feel like I wouldn't call it a waste of a signing. It was just inconsequential based off of what happened since they signed him.
I think that's totally fair. So in other words, to summarize what you basically just articulated, 1, you get a day 3 pick in the 6th round, which you did not have as of a couple days ago. 2, you
didn't have before you signed him, by the way.
Correct.
Right.
And maybe you use that for an actual pick. Maybe you use that in the whole trade aspect over the next 24 hours. You get a little fluffed up in the cap standpoint with an extra $2 million. And then you get more roster flexibility, which is what you just discussed from a safety perspective. On top of, you didn't really have fit for him. You were concerned about the medical, I would think, based on what he put on tape for 30% of the snaps week 1 against the Bills. And then just to add a little bit more context to what you said, in January, he underwent PCL procedure on his knee. Significant procedure. Was ready for the start of camp, though, as you mentioned, but then had his knee drained and did not look like the Jaire Alexander of old in week 1. And so that combined with what they hope is a young and developing secondary. He's on the outside looking in. It's not a surprise whatsoever. Now he gets a chance to go and do perhaps what Adafe's had a chance to do with the Chargers, revive his career and go compete for back-to-back national championships, back-to-back Super Bowls in Philly. So it sounds like it's kind of like a win-win across the board and a nice little parting message here from his secondary coach too.
Yeah, Chuck Pagano got on Twitter and said, hey, we're going to miss you, J.A. Let me blow this up so I can see a little bit better. We're going to miss you, J.A., a pro's pro and a man's man. What a great example you were on how to handle a really tough situation. You're a light, shined bright every single day. Much love and respect. I felt like he was a light too. And when he said that he handled the tough situation with that light, I thought maybe I left it in quick hits, but Jeff Zrebeck did report that Jaire Alexander didn't officially request a trade, but he made it clear he wanted to play, and he was buried. And so the Ravens got, a 6th rounder out of it. I mean, obviously most of those are inconsequential, those 6th round picks. But listen, at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson seemed like he wanted him back over the offseason. The Ravens got him. Now they went to a 3 safety look. They got $2 million back. At the end of the day, we're going to look back on it as like a blip on the radar, mostly forget about it and just be like, man, remember that time that Jaire Alexander was a Raven? That was kind of fun. Kind of like we do with Odell Beckham Jr. That was kind of fun, even though nothing big came out of it. Although with Beckham, the Ravens did waste a lot of money. With Jaire, they're not.
15 M's.
There's a lot of money put into that
Odell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But props to both for coming in and being professionals. And it sure seems like Jaire was exactly that and more. And now he's going to have a chance again to resurrect his career with the Philadelphia Eagles. And speaking of Odafe, we've already mentioned him a couple times, just being that, we're several weeks removed now, almost a month from Odafe being traded to the Chargers in exchange for Alohi Gilman, who has, had his fair share of tackling woes. Got to get some polish together there, no doubt about it. We watched that on Thursday night against the speedy Devon Achane. But as you look at the metrics, which we will in just a second, the Ravens defense trending in the correct direction. You hope that they continue to ascend and got to cut down on the overall yardage that they're still allowing. Output has been good, but they're still allowing a lot of yards. But meanwhile, as we kind of in the short term here, look at how this overall trade so far is developing, it's been a great facelift for Odafe, who did not have one sack in Baltimore, Sarah, prior to the trade. And since then, as you see on the screen, he's been balling for Jim Harbaugh.
He's been balling. He just put up 2 sacks over the weekend, along with 2 tackles for loss, and 4 pressures. So he had a big game. That's now 4 sacks in 4 games. Bobby, he couldn't be happier, I'm sure, being in a contract year to suddenly be putting up big numbers like this. I'm happy for him as he tries to make money from the Chargers or somebody else. So obviously, I think what you're just implying, when we look at the trade overall, it's clearly win-win. It's clearly win-win in terms of like him doing exactly what the Chargers wanted. And Alohi Gilman has completely changed this defense. Obviously, the context needs to put out there that the first 5 weeks, the Ravens were playing playoff teams from last year and likely playoff teams this year. And now they've been playing teams that are likely not going to go to the postseason. That being said, it is still
banged up. As Evan noted last week, right? Weeks 1 through 5, relatively banged up too towards the back half.
You mean the Ravens defense was banged up for sure. But nonetheless, since that trade has gone down, the Ravens have gone from allowing 35.4 to 13 points. I mean, that's insane. That's insane. It's just night and day. Yards allowed almost 100 less per game. Pass yards allowed a little bit less, not huge numbers. Rush yards allowed 146 to 85. I mean, that's a big deal. Takeaways is the big one, to go from 2 over weeks 1 through 5 to 5 since week 6. So it's clearly a win-win. So to me, that's not really the question that we should be asking ourselves. I think most people would be like, hey, Chargers are happy, Ravens are happy. They both got an uplift on their defense. The question that I have, that I think a lot of people are asking, is, did the Ravens misuse Odafe? He was not putting up those numbers here, so it was smart to ship him out. But do you feel like they misused Odafe Oweh? Is that why he wasn't getting, that many sacks this year?
I just think there was a lack of development within Baltimore's system. And so, yeah, there is a level of misuse there. At the same time, he got a lot of chances. I know the first 5 weeks, his snap count didn't suggest that. But if you take the previous 3 or 4 years into consideration, this was a dude who was a starter from day one as a former first-round pick. So I think there was a level of underdevelopment within the Ravens system. And now he's showing immediately, though, that if you do utilize him more to his strengths, and some of this has to do with, hey, the Chargers have a better defensive line than the Ravens there. That's probably actually where it begins. It probably starts and ends there. When you're playing opposite Khalil Mack, that's probably where this starts and ends. And it's not to take away at all from what Odafe has done so far. We'd have to study each and every sack. It's like an interception. You have to study these statistics to truly know the context behind them. So I'd say it's probably more about that than anything else. But we both know that his athleticism is off the charts. And if he is to reach his full potential, I think we all would expect him to be a perennial Pro Bowl type player that's flirting with that double-digit sack category and a ton of pressures to go along with it on a yearly basis. We never saw that consistently in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I know you were kind of talking out loud and getting to your final conclusion. Yeah, I don't know that it's as much as development, right? Because it's not like the Chargers developed him. Like, he just plugged in and he started putting up sacks, right? To me, it's more, because Odafe Oweh last year had double-digit sacks in the Raven system with this defensive coordinator, I do think that he was able to take advantage of having somebody like Nnamdi Madubuike in the middle. So Jonas Schaefer just pointed out this morning that since losing Nnamdi Madubuike, the Ravens' pressure rate on plays without blitzes is an NFL worst, 17.2%. over the past decade, no defense has finished a season even below 20%. So I just feel like Odafe Oweh is still the same player, that he can get production with the right players surrounding him. And last year that was the case, and you saw double-digit sacks. And then this over at the Chargers, you're seeing a similar thing. Now, if he goes off and suddenly gets, 15, 20, 15, 17, 18 sacks in a season, like then it's like, whoa, that is an indictment on the Ravens, a big indictment. But if he continues this and is more shows what he was last year, then to me it might be evidence that it's more about who's playing around him rather than development or use.
And let me dig further into some of my initial comments there early on to give a little bit more context on that. It's when I say underdevelopment, a lot of that has to do with what's this player's potential. What's this Ravens track record at that position. We know they have really mightily struggled throughout the Eric DeCosta era at outside linebacker when it comes to drafting and developing. So what I mean by that is this is a player that did not reach his full potential in Baltimore. Has he developed in 3 weeks or whatever it's been in the chart? No, I don't mean that. Of course he hasn't. It's been under a month in the system with Jesse Minter and whatnot. I'm talking about overall as a whole, when you look at the full body of work, what they were expecting him to be, knowing that they used a first-round pick on him. What was it, in 2021? I think that he and Rashad Bateman were draft classmates, if memory serves, in the first round of the 2021 draft. I know he was a late bloomer to the game. He's Nigerian, I believe. He did not grow up playing the sport like a lot of Americans do initially. And so he and David Ojabo didn't necessarily have all of those years of grassroots football to hang their hat on. So when I look at it overall as a whole, it just makes me think about some of the struggles they've had at outside linebacker, and then just the God-gifted specimen that is Odafe and some of those traits. I would have liked to have seen more over his time in Baltimore. And that's what I meant.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair with we're going to see what happens with Mike Green. So it's either a development or just a bad pick kind of situation, right? So we'll see what happens with Mike Green. But there's Adisa Isaac. He's been injured, several times, but hasn't done much. Who else has been drafted? Tavius Robinson, who has developed as a fourth rounder. So that's in Eric DeCosta's favor Eric DeCosta / coaching in both the pick and development. But David Ojabo is the big one. That just hasn't panned out. And then it goes back to Odafe Oweh. So I wouldn't say they've all been bad, but it's not like a stellar list either.
Still searching for that headliner, particularly when it comes to the first round pick and the type of investment that you're making and that type of player. But hey, they got guys in house that, like to your point, still have a chance to turn that narrative around. It's really not a narrative; it's kind of factual. Remember, we had a super chat donor within the last few weeks say, "What did he say?" He said, "Outside linebacker is what." Eric DeCosta to outside linebacker is what Ozzie Newsome was to wide receiver. Remember that?
Yeah, that was a good point.
It was.
Although again, Tavius Robinson has been good, and Odafe Oweh has been okay. Not as a first rounder. He had double-digit sacks. He now has 4 in 4 games, so it may not be a bad draft pick. It might be what's around him. So he's not batting 0. Yeah. Whereas I'd say the history for Ozzie at wide receiver was a little bit longer.
Right. Eric's still got these dangling players that are out there that could potentially turn this thing around. And you already mentioned a couple of them, Mike and Tavius being at the top of that list. And if Adisa can stay healthy, who's to say that he can't? Probably not till next year at this point. But those are the players that could at least turn this tide around. So thanks for being here today, guys. Obviously, it's going to be a pretty busy, momentous couple days to start off this week as we approach the NFL's trade deadline, Tuesday, the 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern. We look forward to providing all kinds of coverage leading up to that. This episode's brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep. It's the official sleep mask partner of me and Sarah and here inside the vault, and we appreciate their continued support. All their sleep masks give you a number of different guarantees. All of them come with a 100% blackout first and foremost. So you are sleeping in straight up cave-like environments if you want to. Like this, the sound mask, the new generation, which I know we've both been sent, and Kadri was sent a care package as well. He's fired up to have a bunch of different features now, thanks to Manta's generosity. These sleep masks that you see on the screen right now, they come with ultra thin headphones, C-shaped eye cups, so there's really no weight or discomfort being added into your sleep. Zero eye pressure, and if you click into it, it'll give you, every single one of these. It'll give you detailed breakdowns of the mask, the technology behind the mask, and Sarah, I know you and the Ellison fam are loving these so far.
Yeah, I mean, just about everybody in the family has at least one Manta Sleep product in their room right now. So everybody has their own kind of preference of what to use, whether it's a noise machine or a sound mask or just a silky mask. Everybody's got something. And that just goes to show you what Manta Sleep can offer. Lots of different things that suit your needs.
You know it. Discount code VAULT10. That's VAULT10 will get you 10% off your next purchase. We appreciate them for their continued support. All that information can be found in the show notes. You got advanced materials and ventilation for unmatched breathability that's built into every single one of these masks. And again, you start toggling through the website, you're going to be on there for a long time because there is a lot to choose from, including all the different white noise machines, which Sarah and I now have. So thanks to Manta Sleep for the continued support. And as always, guys, you know the drill. When you support our brand sponsors, you are directly supporting the continued growth of the Vault. So thanks to Manta. Let's get to some super chats, and we'll continue the conversation from week 9, Sarah, because it was insane yesterday across the National Football League. Dre Dog's in the house. You guys probably have noticed that we've been flashing up super chats on the screen. Sarah and I feel like when you get a fresh weekend and you get Sunday off where you just get to watch football, I think you come into a week with a fresh mind. I think we both feel like, based on feedback, based on preferences, we got to continue to move this show along, give you the content. Super chats are such an important component of what we do. We also want to provide what you guys subscribe for, and that is football-related content. So you're going to notice a concerted effort being made to kick things into high gear here, just out of respect to feedback that we've gotten. Appreciate you, Dre Dog. Douglas H. Brown Sr., Sarah, is here with us today.
Yeah. So he said, just got in the door after being in Charleston all weekend, meeting with the grandson. Long 5.5-hour trip, but I'm here for my daily dose of hope.
On top of that, he gifted 5 channel memberships as well. We appreciate you, Douglas. Rave says, how is it win-win, Sarah? Referring to the Adafe trade. Only reason our stats are better is because we played nobody so far or sucks. Think about it. All of a sudden, Oweh is good now. Mike just got a sack. And how many weeks? Or sucks. Rave is not a believer yet in that it's a win-win, Sarah.
That's fine.
Yes, it is fine.
Yeah.
Andrew, appreciate you guys for being here. Wildlife, I think we had this one up as well. Wildlife was letting us know that the analogy that we keep using, it was him. Appreciate you, Wildlife. I'll make sure to give you credit moving forward. All right. You ready for week 9 and the insane weekend that it was? Goodness.
Ooh, week 9. Week 9 was very interesting to watch. We said it before we went into our break that we were looking forward to watching football in a relaxed mode. And probably this was my favorite game to watch, was the Bears and Bengals, because it was an absolute shootout. And the ending is exactly what a Ravens fan would want to see, which is your AFC North opponent, your AFC North enemy, dropping a win. They had it. It seemed in the bag, but Bobby, you can never, ever trust the Ravens defense. Excuse me. That is also probably true. But even worse than the Ravens defense is the Bengals defense. It is very hard to trust the Ravens defense in the fourth quarter. But man, oh man, the Bengals defense are literally worse. Bobby, Joe Flacco at 40 years old put up 15 points in a span of I'm trying to remember what the seconds were. I had it on here and I lost the note. But he puts up 15 points in something like 49 seconds, something crazy like that. But he left 54 seconds on the clock, where the Bears, this isn't like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or Manning from back in the day or Allen or Lamar. No, this is Caleb Williams. You gave him 54 seconds. It was too much time. It looked like for a second that maybe the Bengals defense might be able to stand. But then I can't remember, it was either third or fourth down. Caleb rushes on a scramble for a first down. And then on the very next play, he hits his tight end for, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 yards. But the Bengals don't believe in wrapping up when they try to tackle. They led with their shoulder, bounced off a big tight end. Another guy flies right over him. This guy, he's not the fastest guy in the world. This isn't like Zay Flowers running it in. This tight end runs it all the way in for a touchdown. And you just see Jamar Chase on the sideline, completely dejected, being like, you mean to tell me us putting up 15 points in about a minute in the fourth quarter wasn't enough? They needed a touchdown, not a field goal. And yet again, the defense is literally the worst in Cincinnati. Like, it is just got to be heartbreaking for Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase. But everybody in Baltimore was celebrating.
Especially because Geno Stone was involved in some of the deficiencies there too, the former Raven. So I think some out there are like, hey, thanks, Geno, for doing what you did. But to give a little bit more, Sarah, I think this maybe sums it up best in terms of just how much of an Achilles heel this Bengals defense has been. They've allowed 500 or more yards as a defense in 3 games this year. The rest of the league combined, 31 other teams combined, have allowed it happen to their defense twice. Think about that. Think about that for a second. That is insane. 500 or more yards in 3 games is what the Bengals defense has now allowed through 9 weeks of football? The rest of the league has done it twice. They spoiled a historic performance from a 40-year-old, as you've already alluded to. Joe was moving the football. The most passing yards in a single game by any player 40 years or older is now owned by Joe Flacco. He joins a list of Tom Brady and Brett Favre, who did it as well. Insane. He was 31 of 46, 470 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and it's all for naught.
All for naught. So
for naught.
That's a good point. But here's the question. And I'm actually very interested in your answer to this, because I know you won't just say what I think Ravens fans want to hear.
Okay.
Now that we're seeing Joe Flacco put up crazy numbers with this insane receiving core. Okay. 40 plus years old. Could it be that Joe Burrow might be slightly overrated? Browning couldn't do it. I get that. But Joe Flacco has put up, I'll look it up, crazy amounts of points with this offense.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow always gets MVP buzz, and I get it. He's putting up insane numbers. But how much, now that you're seeing Joe do this, you wonder how much is he really benefiting from certainly the best receiving core in the NFL today?
Definitely by a wide margin.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can go there yet because of the sample size. We saw Joe last year, Sarah. He got MVP. He could have gotten, I don't know off the top of my head if he actually got MVP votes last year, but there was talk about him getting MVP consideration until they missed the playoffs. And even having missed the playoffs, there was still buzz around. That's how good he was statistically last year for a historically bad. And somehow this Bengals defense is going to one-up how bad they were last year, the way that they're going right now. So I don't know if I can go there based on the sample size at hand, like do it for a full season. And maybe I would be more receptive to that conversation. But certainly there's a system in place, Sarah, and maybe this is what you're getting at. There's a system in place in Cincinnati that if you get in there and you're a high-level processor like Joe is, and you can still sling that thing like he can, you can have success given the way that this offense is built. Yeah. So I hear you on that. I do. If that's what you're if you're going in that direction.
Listen, Joe Burrow's a good quarterback. I'm not trying to take everything away from him. But the way people talk about him as being just next level and all of that, for me, this type of thing will make me pause just a little bit. Yeah, he's a great quarterback. He is. But how much is he benefiting? And maybe, and it's a hypothetical that really can't be answered. It's all subjective and opinion and all that kind of stuff. But seeing Joe do this, it definitely puts the question in the back of my mind of like, how much is Joe Burrow and how much is his receiving core?
Well, how about this? What you could definitely say is outside the Super Bowl run, Joe has either been unavailable, right? He's had a lack of availability from a health standpoint, or he just hasn't done enough. And it's almost painful to say this because of how statistically exceptional he was last year, but it wasn't enough to overcome that defense. And that's the bottom line. And I think he
And
probably
it's happening now. It's the same result. That's the point. It's the same result.
Through a much smaller sample size, it's the same result.
Through 3 weeks, 3 weeks of him playing with them.
Yeah.
He's done an exceptional job on the offense. And again, he did it with Cleveland too, I know, but it's even another level with Bengals. And that's just like, that's what I think is like the fair question is it's like, I mean, look what Joe did when he had like a decent set of receivers the Super Bowl year, you know?
Well, guess what?
It's like, maybe receiving core along with an offensive line, by the way. I feel like you need both, but perhaps just like in Odafe Oweh's case that we just talked about, perhaps Odafe Oweh is benefiting from the players around him like he did when Nnamdi Madubuike was still playing last year. Perhaps Joe Flacco is benefiting from having an Anquan Bolden and a Torrey Smith and a Jacoby Jones. Perhaps both Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow are benefiting from having an insane wide receiver core. And maybe it's hard for us to really evaluate who Joe Burrow is because of who's surrounding him.
Well, the beauty of it is the benefit of this entire conversation will be Joe's timetable, because you're going to have a chance to see more of this, knowing that he won't be back until what? If they're out of the playoff picture, why are you bringing him back to begin with in December or whatever his timeline was? I think the initial timetable was mid to late December, right? Because
it was for the Ravens game. It was for the second Ravens game. Yeah,
correct. When it first came down, we were looking at it. Hey, the Ravens play the Bengals 2 times within a 3-week span.
Mm-hmm.
So we were having that conversation as it relates to December. If they're out of the playoff picture, you're not bringing him back. Why would you?
Yeah.
Maybe they will, but why would you?
He would have to be pushing for it, that's for sure. But meanwhile, Bobby, let's look at some more AFC North games.
Yeah.
So this one was the one that was a little bit more surprising to me, was the Steelers game, that they were able to pull out a win over the number 1 seed of the AFC, the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if they're the number 1 this morning. I guess I should look that up. But Indy was on a roll, and Pittsburgh's defense was not inspiring much confidence going into this game. And then what do you know? Indianapolis and Daniel Jones just completely blew it. And Daniel Jones probably had one of his worst games with all these interceptions and turnovers. This is what's crazy to me, is the Steelers ended up getting 6 turnovers off of the Colts and turned it into 24 points. So the fact that they only won by, what was the final score again? I'm trying to back up, but it's not backing up for me. Oh, you're not in slides anymore.
Sorry, I gave you the AFC playoff picture, but it's 27-20 was the final.
20-27. You only won by 7 points with 6 turnovers. You should have a 40 burger there at least. And so that's why I'm still not very inspired by the Steelers at this point. I mean, it's a huge win, and they did force some of those turnovers, but 6? So Indianapolis just completely, just left and right, shooting themselves in the foot. And again, I don't mean to take anything away from the Steelers, because they did force some of those, but now they're 7-2. Thanks for bringing this up. Still at the top of the AFC, but tied with other 7-2 teams in Denver and New England. And so, I don't know what to believe. Like, should I question Indianapolis more, or should I believe in the Steelers more? Which one for you?
What I'm believing in is this league has a tremendous amount of parity. There is an insane amount of parity. And what the Steelers, I think, have shown in recent weeks, Sarah, is that they can ham and egg. You know, it's one of my favorite golf phrases. What does ham and egg mean? Well, one hole, your partner gets a great drive, is driving well off the tee. The next hole, you're handling business off the tee, and then vice versa. Your short game comes up big, right? Their defense won them a game yesterday. In past weeks, their defense has, one, failed them, or two, they've had to lean on Aaron Rodgers in this offense. So you're seeing some good complementary football on a week-to-week basis from Pittsburgh. I just think that there is so much, which is why I've been so cautious to begin with on this Ravens run that they could be very well in the middle of right now. They might go on a 9. Who knows? Can they rip off the next 9? We'll see. And anybody that wants to know, Luke's like, why are you talking about ham and eggs? It's a golf part. It's a match play golf reference. You got to go check it. But the amount of parrots, Sarah, Green Bay lost to Carolina this weekend. Indianapolis lost to Pittsburgh, as we're talking about right now. There's a tremendous level of parity, and that's why I think moving forward, it's hard to fully lean into the idea that they're going to be able to rip off 9 in a row and maybe not have a trap game or a wonky AFC North game added into to that schedule moving forward. So you asked me a question, then when I went in a different direction. So
yeah, so the question was, do you have less belief in Indianapolis after this game or more belief in the Steelers? Because the Steelers defense was definitely getting dogged. Like, they were not playing up to a certain standard. Yeah. And so does this make you believe in the Steelers more, or do you just feel like Daniel Jones and this offense was a pretender?
But there were definitely some gifts. There were definitely some gifts among those 6 turnovers.
Well, when you have 6, some of them are going to be gifts. Some of them they forced. Yeah.
The old Daniel Jones showed his face a little bit there we all remember his tenure as a New York Giant. It was not pretty. A lot of that was due to what was around him or what wasn't around him. But some of that started to, you just saw there were some gifts being thrown around there. So, look, I think Indianapolis it's worked for them. Obviously, they've had a tremendous first half, but I trust Pittsburgh more in terms of them being the more capable team of being a playoff team. Now, look,
well,
the Colts have they've dug themselves in, not a hole. They've put themselves in a nice cushioned position now to have some struggles over the second half of the season. So I'd probably trust Pittsburgh more after yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is more like not versus Indianapolis. It's like, do you trust Pittsburgh themselves more than you trusted them before the weekend? For me, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would just say for me, I'm still at the same place.
Okay.
Steelers are still who I feel like that they've been. I feel like I've more been like, to your point, Daniel Jones re-emerged from the guy that we've known from a larger sample size. Whereas I feel like there's a larger sample size of the Steelers defense this year not playing up to snuff. And so this doesn't raise my concern for the Steelers versus what they were before this weekend, if that makes sense. It wasn't like between the two, who do you believe in more? It was more like, do you believe in the Steelers more than you did before the weekend?
I got you. And so I think we'll probably go a little bit on opposite sides of the spectrum there, just because I think Mike Tomlin's been able to somehow weather this insane storm when it comes to his team this year. At times you're looking at them and you're thinking, what scares you about this offense outside of the DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers connection? And then, as we've seen up until yesterday, at times, like what you just referenced, wow, this does not look like this Steelers defense looks unrecognizable. Mm-hmm. But then somehow, some way, they take on a completely different makeup on a week-to-week basis. So, do I think that they're Super Bowl contenders? No, I do not.
Right.
But I think they're going to give the Ravens a good challenge for this AFC North, as I've been saying for a while now.
Well, so speaking of the AFC North, let's bring that up. So the Ravens went within a week from last place in the AFC North to second place because they had 2 wins in 5 days. With the first one, they already overcame the Browns. The Browns are coming off of a bye. Nothing to talk about from them over the weekend in terms of game action. Cincinnati Bengals with that loss yesterday and the Ravens 2 wins. The Ravens now overtake them. It would have been nice to see the Steelers fall to the number 1 seed of the AFC, Indianapolis Colts. It would have been a great chance to get the Ravens within 1 game. Now they're within 2 games. So now I saw a lot of, like, after the Steelers win, I saw a lot of Ravens fans getting nervous about their chances against the Steelers. I guess my question to you, this is another just before Saturday to Monday, do you feel better or worse about the Ravens winning the AFC North? I know you were already not a big believer, but are you like, now that you see the Steelers beat the Colts, are you more nervous? Nervous isn't the right word, because I know that you're not, like, you're coming from a journalistic point of view and not a fan point of view. Do you feel like the Ravens' chances are now worse than they were on Saturday?
Yeah, I see what you're asking. I think I probably feel the way you do about a couple minutes ago. You're like, I'm still where I'm at, neutral. I think that's probably where I'm at for now. But obviously, the last couple of weeks has gone really well for the Ravens. They've gotten some help around them, as you've already mentioned. And so, yeah, I think as of right now, I probably feel the same.
Yeah, and you know what? The statistics kind of back that up. I'd say the Steelers' chances improved, but the Ravens are still the leaders in terms of winning the AFC North. So on November 1st, that was on Saturday, the Ravens had almost doubled the chances of the Steelers, but they were at 59.5% chance of winning the AFC North, according to Kalshi. The Steelers are at 29.5. The Ravens only went down 1.5% in terms of their chances of winning the AFC North. So they just went down to 58%, from 59.5 to 58. So the Ravens are still in great position to win the AFC North, according to the odds makers. And those are emotionless, as Femi has pointed out on the show before. But the Steelers put themselves in a better place, because prior to beating the Colts, I think Kalshi was almost thinking they would lose, maybe predicting it, that they would lose to the Colts. So they went from 29.5% chance to win the AFC North to 41%. So the Ravens barely budged, but the Steelers put themselves in a better position. But listen, I still feel really good about the Ravens winning this division based off of the changes we've seen, but also looking at the next 5 games. The Steelers will have a couple easy games, but a couple tough ones. They have the Chargers coming up, who have been playing pretty decently well. Bengals, I'm going to pick the Steelers for that. The Bears, the Ravens just beat them. They did come back on the Bengals, but we know what happened there. But then they've got the Bills, and then they've got the Ravens. Meanwhile, the Ravens have Minnesota, Cleveland, Jets, Cincinnati, and then they'll meet Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So, I mean, the Steelers, a lot of people are saying the Ravens are going to have to sweep the Steelers, and maybe they will. But there's no way the Steelers are going to win all 4 of these games before they meet Baltimore in 5 weeks. Like, no way is probably a little strong, but I highly doubt the Steelers are going to go undefeated before they match up against Baltimore in Week 14.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that'd be that'd be standing on some sort of ledge right there. I mean, that's a difficult stretch for them. I mean,
absolutely.
Look, we know that Chicago has its fair share of weaknesses and inconsistencies, but they're still a team to be reckoned with. They just hung 47 on a team that gets paid too. 47 points. And we saw that, they are capable of scoring in bunches. And the Bengals obviously bent significantly from a defensive standpoint. In terms of the next opponent for the Ravens, coming off their mini bye, they will travel to Minnesota this upcoming Sunday. It's a 1:00 kickoff with the Vikings. And in J.J. McCarthy's return, he and Minnesota, Sarah, upset the Detroit Lions 27-24. As you can see at the NFL Network panel, not a lot of people, including Vegas, had Minnesota winning this game. They found a way. He didn't do anything crazy special statistically, but got it done when it counts, including an iced 3rd down conversion under 2 minutes. What do you think of Minnesota's performance?
It was surprising. I didn't think that they were, just like all those NFL picks and analysts, I didn't think that they were going to win. I think that it gets your attention, which is good. You don't want to have you just won 2 huge games in a row. You're going to have a 10-day rest because you played on Thursday night. You could start feeling confident and like, okay, well, you're going back to JJ McCarthy, and things could start to take it for granted that the Ravens are in a good position to win. So they have my attention. I'm not going to overlook them. I don't think the Ravens are overlooking them. That being said, does it change big time for me of like, do I scare them or fear them more? Not necessarily, but they have my attention. You can't overlook them. But I still like the chances of the Ravens being able to play against an inexperienced quarterback. He's getting more experience as he goes, but he's still young and he's still learning. The defense should be able to keep them to a decent amount of points. And I feel like Lamar Jackson should be able to outscore him. So they have my attention, but I don't think that's going to change my view that the Ravens can and will beat them in their matchup.
It's a well-coached team. It's a team that can run the football effectively. It's going to start there for this Ravens defense. We know that. Will there be a new player on the Ravens defense that can help them stop the Minnesota run? We'll have to wait and see. You hope that that's the case, because that's an area that, sure, in the last couple of weeks, have they struggled mightily? No. But over the full body of work, now through 9 weeks of football, that's been an area that has got to get shored up if they want to make a run moving forward.
Well, and specifically, real quick, I know a lot of people online were talking about the defense, the Vikings defense, just because they did hold the Lions to 24 points. And why is his name escaping me right now? The defensive coordinator for the Miami, or excuse me, for the Minnesota Vikings.
Brian Flores.
Thank you, Brian Flores. And we all remember, I believe that Brian was in charge of the defense when they gave Lamar Jackson the zero blitz look, and then Greg Roman. And, yes, it was when he was with Miami. Now he's with the Vikings. So I know people are nervous about him, and that's fair. Again, he has everybody's attention. You don't want to overlook him, but it's not like Minnesota is killing it when it comes to like the defensive categories. They're still in the 20s when it comes to yards given up per game. And where are they in terms of points per game? They're down the list. You know, I wish that ESPN.com would list these, but they look to be just below average. Yeah. So I know that Brian Flores is over there and he needs to be respected and he can't be overlooked. But I also don't know that the Vikings defense are like, you know, the suffocating defense that I think people are letting on after yesterday's win.
We're going to have a chance to see it on Sunday. Elsewhere, game of the week, game of the year, maybe. This had a little bit of everything, and it was thoroughly dominated by Buffalo despite this close, quote-unquote, close final score. So the Bills, 28-21 winners at home over Kansas City, Sarah. Josh Allen improved to 5-1 in the regular season against Patrick Mahomes. We know that Mahomes has the upper hand over basically everybody not named Cincinnati in the postseason. And so I had a chance to watch this one yesterday. It was in the 4:25 window. And here's what the Bills did really well, which told a lot of the story. Okay, they pressured Mahomes and then some. 52.6% of his dropbacks, Patrick was pressured. Plus 14.3% higher than their pressure rate in any of their other 9 matchups against the Chiefs since 2020. So they made a concerted effort to get after Mahomes. I did not look comfortable in this game, Sarah, and it was kind of reminiscent of what we watched in the Super Bowl, to be honest with you. He completed just 3 of 16 passes for 61 yards and an interception when pressured. So clearly, the Bills made, I believe Bobby Babick is their defensive coordinator. The strategy was clear and obvious, and it worked for him really well yesterday.
So here's kind of the question, because Josh Allen and the Bills are now 5-1 against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the regular season. But I don't think they've ever beaten him in the postseason, correct? They've lost every single time. Why? Why is that? What are your thoughts? Like, why is it that they can dominate in the regular season and then get dominated in the postseason by the Chiefs?
That's the $1 million question.
I bet they want to figure it out.
The Bengals and the Eagles are the only ones with the formula to that, apparently, in the postseason. But yeah, we'd be here for hours if we tried to, contextualize that. But ultimately, Mahomes and company play their best when it matters most in the postseason.
Yeah.
That's a general way Very general, high-level way of answering your question. But as we saw in the Super Bowl and as we saw yesterday, when you pressure the all-out, you know what, out of Mahomes, there will be some. He's human. He's human, and you saw that yesterday. I think this was a major win. As well as they played offensively and putting up 28 points, obviously on the Chiefs. It's a great day. It's a great day when you put 28 on Steve Spagnuolo's defense. But I think it was more about the disruption that they caused to the overall flow, mechanics, and rhythm with which Patrick Mahomes wanted to play yesterday. And you saw that successfully done by the Eagles back in February.
Yeah.
Can the Ravens pull from that? We don't know because we haven't seen it. We saw it in the AFC Championship game. You look at the overall output of scoring. That was a successful day for Mike McDonald and company a couple of years ago. Very successful day. We know why they lost that game. It wasn't that side of the ball. I know that.
Yeah. There's definitely an element to this where, like, I do think that the Chiefs go all out in the postseason, whereas everybody goes all out for the Chiefs in the regular season, if that makes sense. Like, everybody is gearing up for that game, especially the Bills or the Ravens or other teams that keep getting beat by them in the postseason. So that's a big part of their offseason is like, what are we going to do? What are we going to change? How are we going to beat these guys? And that's what happens when you're frequently either the Super Bowl champ or you're the Super Bowl representative from the AFC. Yeah. Everybody's going to give you their best shot. And they can't return that for everybody. Obviously, the Bills are one of those teams that they want to. But like once they get into the postseason, then they're like, okay, now let's take it to a next level. Because we can't do that week in and week out. And we can get a look at them and what they've changed. And maybe we won't change too much. Let them reveal what they've changed to get to us. And then we'll use that against them in the postseason. So those are just some thoughts of why that cycle keeps repeating itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, and let me just throw that out there because I've given a lot of credit to Buffalo's defense. But again, they did not turn the ball over. So just to show a little bit of love to the other side of the football, which obviously had to hold its end of the bargain here. They did not turn over the football. They were not heavily penalized. They dominated the time of possession by 9 minutes. And how about third down? They moved the chains. They were 7 of 12. Josh made the plays that he needed to make. They ran the football effectively. And ultimately, yet again, they have the upper hand in the regular season against the Chiefs.
How about the Seahawks game? I know you pulled this one in.
Well, yeah, just because Mike Mack. Because
okay. I was like, I'm not really too worried about the NFC right now, but you're doing it for Mike Mack. Okay.
No, nor should we be. But the fact that Mike's got them firing on all cylinders and Sam Darnold, Sarah, it wasn't just lightning in a bottle last year in Minnesota for him. You get him in the right system. You get him with playmakers around him. You get him in a fully functional, high-level organization, and you see a lot of his talents showcase themselves. In NFL history, 4 quarterbacks have done the following over their team's first 8 games of a season. Completed 70% of passes, thrown for over 2,000 yards, thrown for 15 or more touchdowns, and taken fewer than 10 sacks. 2025 Sam Darnold in Seattle, Sarah, joins a list with Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees. So good for him because that's elite company. And good for Mike Mack. I know it pains some of you out there to see this, but it's just something that's worth following. He's now the 3rd head coach in NFL history to win 11 of his first 12 road games. He's rolling, as are the Patriots, Sarah. Mike Vrabel has got the New England Patriots in year 1 clicking. They were undefeated in October, and they began November pretty darn well as well. 24-23 winners over Atlanta. They right now are atop the AFC East. Matter of fact, I'll give you just the overall AFC East standing update. Just not that it matters, but this does matter for the overall AFC picture. They are 7-2, 1 game ahead of the Buffalo Bills at 6-2.
God, the Ravens. This is why everybody's like so upset about the slow start, the defense, the defensive issues, the injuries, like all of it. This is a playoff picture that the Ravens should be right there in the mix, and if not at the top. You know, this is why everybody's like, man, this could be the year because none of them none of them are super scary to me like they've been in the past, where you're just like, oh, I don't know. Like even the year that the Ravens beat the New England Patriots and the Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning, like those two teams, when the Ravens made it as a wild card, I'm like, all right, well, even if they beat the Colts in the first round, but then you got to go to Denver and see Peyton Manning, and then you got to go to New England and see Tom Brady. Like at the time, you're like it's like little to no chance. Nobody here on this AFC playoff picture gives me those types of nerves. You know what I mean? The way they're playing right now. And of course, the Chiefs can always turn it on, like we just talked about and whatnot. But this is why I don't want to quit yet, where so many people have given up on the season. Like, go and win the AFC North and see this Indianapolis Colts that just gave up 6 turnovers. The Buffalo Bills, who have not looked spectacular. Kansas City Chiefs at 5-4. Like, sure, it's New England that's coming on, but again, you have to respect them all. But I don't fear any of them the way there was the fear factor with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. This is why it's just like, go and win the AFC North. Get yourself together. Make a trade, EDC, before tomorrow at 4:00, and let's see what they can do.
Well, what's funny about when you say that, my mind says, okay, there's a pro and a con to that. One, it's wide open. This playoff picture, wide open.
Wide open.
But given the parity and given what the Ravens over a full body of work have shown to be, yes, injuries have marred them through a good chunk of the first 9 weeks. But the con to that is, due to that parity, did they scare people like they used to as well? And I think that's a legitimate question that needs to be asked.
Yeah. Did the Ravens scare people? Absolutely not. Which is where exactly they like to be as the underdogs. I've been preaching, get used to not being an underdog, but you got it now. You are an underdog for sure.
We just got a super chat last week about how they've won in that category in the past, right? Why not again as wild card berths? We'll have to wait and see. And just a look around the league, again, that AFC West, Sarah, is really, really taking shape. You want to talk about a bunch of different scenarios that could play out in the AFC West in the coming weeks. This is the division, along with the AFC North, that could certainly be that. Denver, 7-2 with an 18-15 win. We had a slide on that earlier on. I think they won 18-15. So just find a way to win. They did against Houston. That was the final there. The Chargers improved to 6-3 with a win over Tennessee, 27-20. And then, like I mentioned, I know it's NFC, but just to speak to the parity of this year, 16-13. Panthers upset the Green Bay Packers. Are you kidding me? Absolutely insane. What a wild weekend it was around the league. And we had a super chat up there a second ago. I can read that if you'd like me to. Chuck's Chris says, Bobby, I disagree with your view on Adafe. Being a Nigerian doesn't mean he does not have football background. Can you say the same to Nnamdi? He is also Nigerian. We have Nigerians in the NFL Hall of Fame. Chucks, I think you misunderstood the point that I was trying to make. Let me be clear. It has nothing to do with his Nigerian heritage. Is that it has everything to do with what is well documented about Ajabo and Adafe. They were late bloomers to the game. And I think it's a fair question to be had whether or not that is related potentially to some of the lack of development at the NFL level. That's all I'm saying. It has nothing to do with where they're from.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that American football is played the most, and so there's more competition in the United States, even though it's growing worldwide. And so there's less competition. You may get into it later. Whereas soccer, for example, throughout Europe or in South America, they play it more. There's obviously a lot of soccer here, but it's just a bigger deal in those other countries. And so you won't see the men's American team dominating at the World Cup like you would expect in other sports. And I think that's more what you're saying is it's just not as much football as maybe you would get elsewhere, and you get that experience.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. I mean, if hopefully that provided a little bit of clarification. If there was any room for interpretation there, I just want to be clear. It's very, very well documented that based on their backgrounds. So
now, real quick, Bobby, before we get to quick hits, as we've said, we've been flashing up quick hit or super chats as they've come in. That way, it's as timely that they're coming in when we're talking about the topics. But also, just real quick before we get to quick hits, are there any that you want to specifically respond to? I know we shouted out Douglas H for the 5 membership gifts. Appreciate you, Douglas. Are there any comments in here or questions that you want to point to specifically?
Yeah, Cook through one or two. Juju Bean says Vikings game isn't going to be easy. They got Brian Flores and they blitz a lot. If our defense doesn't keep them in check, we'll have a tough time next week, which is kind of piggybacking off of, I think, what we were both discussing. Habitual Line Stepper says Mel Kiper really had you all hyped thinking EDC was a top 5 GM. Some of us at the end of the bar refused to be gaslit by Ravens media. Top 5. What makes you think that Eric's not a top 5 general manager? I would push back on that. He's one of the more aggressive GMs. He's taken a lot of swings, Sarah, particularly at wide receiver throughout his time in the first round. And some of them have worked. Others haven't. If based on his track record and based on the needs that are currently in play, and based on going back to our early topic related to the Jaire Alexander trade and what they now have at their disposal, both pre and post Jaire, he's got everything he needs to go get an impact player or two coming up in the next 24 hours. And I think he will.
I think you can't dismiss the fact that the Ravens have the most players in the NFL playing right now that were drafted by the Ravens, more than any other team. So when the Ravens do move on from them, they don't go into retirement. Like other teams pick them up and they play. And so there are more NFL players that started as a draft pick from the Ravens than any other team. And that can't be dismissed. I do think there's a point, though, that can be said is that the Ravens definitely are benefiting from having Lamar Jackson. And there have been some misses outside linebacker in particular. And the offensive line I don't think Eric DeCosta did enough at the guard position during the offseason. We know how important that is. So it's not that Eric DeCosta is without criticism, but no GM is. And the numbers say that he's among the top guys.
Yeah, it's curious. It's interesting to see the onslaught in the live chat that are immediately saying it's not even a question. He's not a top 5, but you're not giving any reason to back up why you feel that way. So why isn't he a top 5 GM? I'm very curious, to be honest. I'm very curious about that. And when it comes to this year's draft class, Sarah, we know that this year's draft class, just in terms of evaluating it, it's had multiple seasons within the first 9 weeks. You're coming off a week, Sarah, where there were 3 key contributions from rookies. There have also been rookies in the past that have severely struggled. Malachi Starks has been under the microscope. Mike Green's, maybe, I don't want to say slow development, but they're asking a lot of him right out of the gate. It's taken, it took 9 weeks for him to record his first sack. Some have just, you can't write these guys off immediately through the first half of their first rookie seasons, particularly the players that have come right out of the gate that are logging significant starting snaps like Teddy, like Mike, and like Malachi. So
good conversation though. Good super chat. Good super chat, sparking good conversation.
And to your point, Sarah, going like in the coming months, we will have that conversation dissecting Eric.
Yeah.
We will look at Cooper Rush's signing. We will look at the lack of guard depth. So that'll all come in the coming months.
All right, so let's move on to some quick hits from over the weekend. We've got a new NFL record set by Cam Little, who officially successfully converted a 68-yard field goal over the weekend. There have now been 7 field goals of at least 60 yards this season, which is the most in a single season in NFL history. So Cam Little taking over Justin Tucker's record. And I'm sure it isn't lost on everybody that next week Justin Tucker's suspension comes to an end.
Yeah, we all
remember. Will a team pick him up and get a chance to get his record back? I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see if he gets signed.
Yeah, edges him out by 2 yards. We all remember the 66-yarder. Just stunning Detroit several years ago. I want to say it was 2021. So the record stood for, if I'm not mistaken, I think this record stood for 4 years. I believe that was 2021 in Detroit. So it was an indoor kick. This game was also, just to throw that out there, this game was also indoors. It's Allegiant Stadium. That's in Vegas, obviously. And what a game it was. This game went into overtime, by the way. So anyway, it was a line drive, as you'd expect, for 68 yards. Good for Cam Little for resetting a record that stood for several years. And to your point, Sarah, maybe we'll see Justin Tucker be signed by a field goal needy team. Yes, it's field goal needies, but kicker needy team in the coming weeks. And as promised, I know I've been talking about this over and over and over again. And I finally said, you know what, Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and I got to stand up and give Jordan Stout some love. I went and did some research prior to our show today. It is a contract year for the former pick of Eric DeCosta's out of Penn State at the punter position. He is also the placeholder as well. He's pretty savvy when it comes to special teams in that regard. But so far this year, Sarah, you're looking at the 5th ranked punter on average. 25 total punts, 51.4 yards per punt, including a long of 64, 12 punts inside the 20. He has pinned teams more often than not. And again, 5th league-wide in terms of average overall ranking for Jordan. He's doing it in what has been an important year for him contractually. And he's also set up with some timely punts as well. Remember, we know a couple in recent weeks, he's set up big plays for the Ravens and put them in good position. So good for him having a contract career year so far.
Are you happy to get that all off your chest?
I feel like I needed to. I kept promising I would, and it was coming off a weekend where we didn't work on Sunday, so I had to. I had to.
You did it, and hey, he is much improved. I appreciate that you're giving him some love. It's tough to get love as a punter. You usually only get criticized if you mess up, but he has been improved over last year. And as we learned last year, special teams can win or lose games. Yeah. So meanwhile, Marlon Humphrey got fined over the weekend, $46,371 for a use of the helmet violation. I wonder if it's the one. It probably is. Yeah, it was against the Chicago Bears. The hit that he was fined for was the one on, how do you say his name? Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus, that went unflagged, and the Ravens initially challenged for an interception. I knew it would be that one. Remember, the replay kept showing it, and they were mostly reviewing to see who had possession of the ball, because it looked to me that it was an interception. But Bears fans were ticked off that was even what they were reviewing, because it really was a clear helmet to helmet. Yeah. And so he was unflagged for it. They were reviewing something else, which was who had possession of the ball, who caught it. But in the end, the league will fine you even if you weren't flagged. So he is out $47,000 for that hit. Okay.
And finally, Patrick McCary. Man, the more things change, maybe the more they stay the same. Ryan O'Hal, and then it cuts off. You threw this in, but Ryan says that Patrick, in year one with the Jaguars, says is leading a team with a team high 7 penalties so far. That's not obviously a category that you want to be a leader in. And as Jeff notes here with some context, and I don't need to tell anybody twice on this, last year he was heavily penalized along the Ravens offensive line. He led the team with 13 overall penalties. So unfortunately for Patrick, in year one in Jacksonville, Sarah, that trend continues.
It continues. It continues. It's one reason why they let him go or let him walk. I liked him as a super sub. I don't love him as a starter. And I think the Jags are seeing that. They're seeing that. And the Ravens, by the way, after last year, have gotten better along the offensive line in pre-snap penalties, wouldn't you say? We were pulling our hair out last year.
Yeah.
So maybe part of it is because McCary has moved on, because 13 penalties last year is a ton.
Yeah. And by the way, they were, as a group, they were heavily penalized too. Ronnie was heavily penalized.
Mm-hmm.
Linderbaum was heavily penalized. So, yeah, they had to clean that up, and so far they have.
There we go.
Primetime 21 says, sorry to cut you off there. Primetime 21 says Mike Green had one of the best spin moves coming out of the draft. Haven't seen him do one in a game. Our coaches teaching our rushers to just go straight with pressure. Oweh has 4 sacks with LAC. It's coaching. We talked about that earlier on.
I don't know. Dr. Rush is somebody that everybody went to, and I think it's the players surrounding him. I do. Now, in terms of Mike Green, yeah, I feel like I've seen his spin move get stood up a few times. It's one thing to do with. Yes, that was yes.
The cross chop on the sack was filth, but maybe we haven't seen what Primetime's getting at here with as much of the spin move as you can. But hey, that's why you come in skilled up. You're going to have to use other areas of technique, right? We learned from Chuck Smith over the summer. I actually have the quote up in front of me, funny enough. He's skilled up. He can cross chop. Mike can spin. Mike can ghost. Mike's the best example of this new generation that have learned from the pros, and he comes in already highly skilled off. He talks about his get off, base 2-point stance, so on and so forth. Like, you got to have a little bit of patience with some of these guys.
Mac McCoy asks, hey guys, can you talk about how Pancake Pat was getting abused last game? I'm still dumbfounded. We actually did talk about that. I remember I had a screen grab of him just getting run over by Bradley Chubb. And there was another play. He didn't make his block. I mean, he just didn't look like Pancake Pat. So we've talked about it. I think, Mac, what you noticed, a lot of us noticed. I mean, you can have other highlights. I saw Baldy post some stuff where he was like praising Pancake Pat and being like, this is what he brings back. So it was a mixed bag for him. Whereas in the past, it's usually just pure domination on his end. He doesn't usually get pushed down like that. So from my point of view, I'm going to like give him a second to get his legs back underneath him. He's been dealing with that calf that was like, obviously re-injured and had a setback, which is why he was out for so long. But yeah, Bobby and I both tweeted about it during the game, and it was like, whoa, because you're not used to seeing it. So we talked about it. Let's see if these 10 days of rest helps him a little bit, and he's got to knock off more rust. But if we continue to see that, I hope this is more of a rust coming back from injury thing than a trend that we'll see going forward. My guess, it's the former, and he'll get back on track.
And you mentioned the caliber player that is Bradley Chubb for one of those 2 reps that I'm sure Pat would want to forget from last week. And we all remember him putting that linebacker in the dirt the week prior. He hadn't played regular season football since January, and he put that Chicago Bear linebacker in the dirt. So hopefully there's just, like you said, there's a reacclimation process, if you will. And by the way, Isaiah Bowers, good note here from earlier on, somebody was criticizing, or one of our most recent Super Chat donors, Primetime 21, I think it was, criticizing the lack of spin moves showcased by Mike Green. And Isaiah's like, hey, you haven't watched the film. I can't say that I've watched every single rep of Mike Green this year. Yeah. Isaiah seems to have, and he in the live chat's like, hey, I have seen some of that on tape. So just for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's what I said, is I just feel like they were he was getting stood up, like they weren't effective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's adjusting to the NFL, but he's getting better. And then, by the way, Mr. Worldwide says that GMs that have built better around their quarterbacks than EDC is, he says, the Broncos, Lions, Eagles, Seahawks, Colts, and he says he'll throw in the Patriots offensive line and defensive line. Yeah, I mean, and it's only going to get worse because obviously Lamar's contract will go up, but still, I mean, the Eagles, to his point, the Ravens basically had almost an identical contract that Jalen Hurts got, and they gave it to Lamar just a month or so later, or they agreed to it. And the Eagles are definitely have a more, I don't know, I think their roster is showing that they're built around him a little bit better. So, yeah. And I think that EDC left himself open for criticism with his guard decisions over the offseason.
Yeah.
It's one thing to miss, like at outside linebackers, but it's another thing to be like, yes, I'm going in with Daniel Fa'alele and Voorhees, and my primary backup is going to be Ben Cleveland, who my head coach doesn't like.
Nightmare Kilo says Eagles, Rams, Chiefs, Lions, Bills, Packers, etc. All of them made moves to move the needle, not just for need. EDC is top 7 at best. He's not bad, but top 5, no. Well, I just don't understand the rationale there.
I need to see the list. I'm not going to stand on anything until I this is a conversation that came up mid-show, and I'm not going to pound the table that he's number 5. I'm thinking of stats off the top of my head that make an argument for it. But I'm not going to sit here and pound the table that he's top 5. I want to look at the list and say, so-and-so's better, so-and-so's better, so-and-so's better. Like who are those 8 or 9 people that are better if he's only top 10?
Yeah, maybe we do a topic on that in the coming days or weeks or whatever. But it's just funny to think that like aggressiveness automatically leads to top 5 status. The dots aren't connected for me on that.
Yeah.
Aggressiveness doesn't always lead to success. I mean, it's from a fandom standpoint, you love aggressiveness, of course, and hopefully they do act aggressive over the next 24 hours within reason. Let's get to our patrons here. Bill Justice and Toey Faree. Thank you both for believing in what we're building. We appreciate you guys for all the support that you give us through Patreon. You have for years. And you can do the same out there if you're interested in visiting patreon.com/RavensVault podcast. You can get more involved in the channel, and you can get monthly shout outs like Bill and Toey choose to do so on a monthly basis. So thank you both. And thanks to everybody for being here, including our friends at Manta Sleep. We appreciate you guys. Code VAULT10, VAULT10 will get you 10% off your next purchase at mantasleep.com, all of which can be found in the show notes. Partner, let's watch our timelines accordingly. There could be some activity later this afternoon. What do you think?
I hope so. I hope so. The Ravens need help on the defensive line and or guard position. He's got resources, EDC does. He's got $15 to $16 million. He's got a gazillion back-end draft picks that he could play with. And maybe if the guy, if there's a game record out there, he'd be willing to go up to something like a second rounder or third rounder for a bigger name. So the Ravens need it. As I said before the weekend, that I think the Ravens, as they're currently constructed, can make a run for the AFC North and perhaps win it. But if they want to go deep into the playoffs, I think that EDC needs to make a significant move before Tuesday at 4:00.
Dre Dog gets us on our way out here, and he says, having a player that the Ravens drafted to be starters on other teams is not a flex. Where do we have a revolving door on most positions on this team?
I disagree with that, but I hear you. I think it's a little bit of a flex that you have starters around the league that were drafted by the Ravens, or not even starters, just players. Like, you drafted them. That says something.
I think maybe this Adafe thing is having an effect on perhaps some of the dialogue surrounding this right now, because he's performed really well through the first few weeks of his tenure as a Charger. We can't stop and end the conversation there. We have to wait and see how this trade ends up progressing. And yeah, like, you're right, Evan. You can't retain everyone in this league.
But the point is not the other teams can't either, but not as many people are picking up their teams that they couldn't, or their players that they couldn't retain. Listen, you can make an argument that EDC's not top 5, but I don't think this is one of them. To me, it's not compelling.
Yeah. Wildlife Pat got pushed back, but he still got the job done. Talking about Pat Ricard, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for an awesome start to what promises to be a very jam-packed week. You and I will be back on Tuesday at 12 noon, as always. And at the point of the show, the start of the show, we'll have a 4-hour countdown to the trade deadline. Will there be activity prior? Will there be activity during or after? We'll see. Maybe all of 3. Who knows? You never know. Appreciate you, partner. And thanks to everybody for spending some time with us on this Monday. If you could, on the way out, like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can consider becoming a channel member or gift-giving membership on this Monday. And Sarah and I will catch you 12 noon, Tuesday the 4th, deadline day, if not before. And as always, Vaultrons, thank you for spending some time with us here inside the vault.